parents were social workers, so I grew up in Long Island, and my parents really were about helping people, and the conversations were mostly about that. And we didn't really talk much about business, so the idea that I'd be in a big company, yet alone a media company, was nothing I kind of had planned. I got into it because I was attracted to the way Nickelodeon, Nick at Night were constructed, and I thought they were really smart. They cared about their audiences, and the audience of kids, there's no better audience than that. So I kind of got into it because I thought that it was different than a lot of other things in television. But I didn't, as a kid, think that I would ever be leading a company in media, a company in general. I probably thought I would be a social worker. Well, we were close, very close to Latin roots. We had my dad had one brother, and my uncle had no children. So we were actually, the cousins we knew were all our Puerto Rican cousins, and my mom had 4 brothers and sisters, and I think there was a total of about 15 cousins. And my mom was very close to her family, and so our experience was that when it came time to go on vacation, I don't know what my parents were doing. I guess they were saving their money, and then they'd ship us down to Puerto Rico. So we would go for 2-3 weeks. I don't remember how long it was. It seemed like it was a long time, and we'd be sent down there, and we'd break up. We were a family of 4 kids, and my mom would come with us. My dad would come at the end of, he'd get 1 week of vacation, and usually 2 or 3 of us would stay with one aunt, and 1 or 2 of us with another aunt, and my uncle, and that's what we did. So we had a very close family connection growing up, and it worked the other way too, because almost all my cousins would come and stay with us over summer in the States. So we had this almost like a cultural exchange program, a family cultural exchange program. So that was very much a part of my life growing up, was this world of family. Then, just in the home, it was a rich, kind of Puerto Rican culture was rich in our home. My mom, she cooked Puerto Rican food. We never ate mashed potatoes. We always had rice and beans. That was the staple of our home. And then, we'd have pasteles for big holidays, and the music was my mother's music, Rafael Hernandez, So it was a kind of a rich cultural upbringing that was, it was very different. It wasn't like, we weren't like everybody else, that's for sure. Well, I remember family, because we were always around family, and it was different for me because I was like kind of growing up as a pop culture American kid, and I'd go down to Puerto Rico, and there was a little bit of a culture shock. TV, which I watched a lot of when I was a kid, was I spoke English and go down there and everything was in Spanish, and I would watch TV, and this is before cable came, so you'd see episodes of TV shows in Puerto Rico that were 2 or 3 years old in Spanish, and you'd scratch your head a little bit. But I had a group of cousins, twins that were my age, and my Uncle Celso's, Tio Celso's family had 3 boys, and Enrique, who's a couple of years younger, and there were a bunch of kids my age in the neighborhood. And one of the neighbors was he was a pole vaulter on the Puerto Rican Olympic team in the 30s or 40s. So he would stage mini Olympics in the neighborhood. So we would all the boys and actually the girls too in the neighborhood would all compete. So so we had a lot of things going on family-wise and otherwise. And the flip side of that was my brother and sister oftentimes stayed with my teenage cousins in Miramar, and they would go to the beach. They'd sneak into hotel beaches and hang out there all day. So sometimes I'd be dropped off there and I'd hang out with the teenagers, which I always liked because I always wanted to be a teenager. Well, I remember, we usually went down in the summer, but I remember just the whole Christmas celebration was very different. I'd hear this, I was younger, but the whole concept of the asaltos, where people would go in and wake up people in the middle of the night, the whole celebration of Christmas as being a series of kind of fun, activities and events was, that was something that, you didn't know unless you were of the culture in a way, But beyond that, I think the other thing for me, actually, the interesting thing in the way I got cultured, and this was in a reverse way, I had a cousin who who played basketball in the Superior League, right? And which is the big, the semi-pro league of Puerto Rico. And I would travel all around the island to go to all his games. So I learned how to play basketball in Puerto Rico. And so I would, my teenage cousins would, this is before they built the autopista. And so as a result, we were going through the mountain roads on the way to Ponce or San Germán or something like that. And it was always a wild ride because they were teenagers. But we went to all these games and it was a lot of fun. So I actually got this kind of different, I learned how to play basketball in Puerto Rico. And I had one aspiration. I wanted to make the Puerto Rican Olympic team. But then I got cut from high school and I realized I wasn't going to ever realize that. Well, I liked being a kid. So just the idea that there was a place that celebrated kids was a big idea to me. That's the Nickelodeon idea. Because when I reflected back on my own childhood, I had good memories of being a kid. But kids' entertainment back when I was growing up was very different. It was really Saturday morning when it came to TV. There weren't a lot of movies. There were some movies. I also had I was the youngest of four, so I actually was, and I had a brother who's 6 years older, so I was into popular music and a lot of things like that. But my life as a kid was about, I love sports. I was a Met fan when they were losing, and then they won. And I was into sports. I played sports every day and watched some TV on Saturday morning, and then I was into popular music at the time. But kids today, with Nickelodeon, you have it's not just Saturday morning; it's all the time. And I think the quality of television that has been made, just not by Nickelodeon, but by others that make kids television, is better and higher. I think there's more variety and diversity for kids. And I think it's good being a kid nowadays. Well, Dora was born in the Nick Jr. group, which I think is a very special development group here, led by a woman named Brown Johnson. And I guess by background, Nickelodeon oftentimes gets a lot of its strength from looking at TV, I think, a little differently than others. We look at the TV and say, what's wrong with this picture? And what we mean by that is, what aren't we doing? And particularly when it comes to the world of kids. And what aren't we doing, meaning what kind of shows aren't being done for kids and how do we do those? And also, if we're a network for kids, we should be representing all kinds of kids. Are we being true to that mission in a way? And so we had a development retreat in which we bring a bunch of people whose job it is to make shows. And this is around 1999. And I think one of the kind of realizations was that what was wrong with this picture was there weren't a lot of Latinos on our screen or behind the screen. And I thought that was, not right if you're going to be a network for kids. And there was buzz that and if you lived in New York, you felt the Hispanic influence growing in leaps and bounds. But this is before the census comes out in 2000, which is I think that kind of lit up most of the the world of media and marketing about the power and numbers of Latinos in America. So anyway, what we did was we decided that we should try to cultivate some talent, find producers, writers to develop shows, and that would be something that would be good in the mix of Nickelodeon. And the idea was to find talent that would bring ideas about experiences they wanted. It wasn't, and hopefully those experiences were going to be about good characters, good stories, and they were going to be universal, and that they would be certainly true to somebody of a Latin background, but also true to anybody that's watching TV. So out of that came a couple of shows, one of which was The Brothers Garcia, about a Mexican-American family out of San Antonio, Texas, by Jeff Valdez, who now has a company called CTV. Another was Taina, which was about a Puerto Rican girl coming of age, kind of for tweens or teens, by Maria Perez. And another one was called Dora the Explorer, done by actually the internal Nickelodeon development group. And Dora was the one that just popped. And it popped, you kind of knew there was something going on. It was very different because the Nick Jr. way is to really engage kids, and it's educational, because for little kids, education is entertainment. For older kids, sometimes they're not as receptive to education from television, but clearly little kids are thinking that that's part of the entertainment. So so Dora was different because Dora spoke to the audience and engaged the audience to talk back to the TV, and also engaged the audience to talk in Spanish, to learn words along the way. And I kind of knew that there was something going on because my wife started getting phone calls from friends about how to get me some of those tapes. The black market, they always try to get something through the back door. So Dora goes on the air, and it looks like it's a hit, and the ratings are really big. And now the rest is history. It's probably moved into, I guess, the space of a Blue's Clues and Sesame Street in terms of its popularity, its multitude of businesses that it sprung off. It's a monster. The director of programming. My job was to oversee the schedules of Nickelodeon and Nick at Night. Eventually, over time, started to develop programming for Nickelodeon, and I set up the first development department where people would talk to producers, writers to bring ideas to make original programming. Nickelodeon had done a little bit of original programming. I got the chance to really make more variety of original programming. So I made a sitcom, we made animated shows, we were probably the first in the cable business to do a full slate of original program. We were doing it before MTV, before TNT, USA. And then what happened was I added responsibility. We had a couple of hits. I did a show called Clarissa Explains It All, the Nicktoons, which Rugrats was a big show. We birthed Blue's Clues. People that worked for me were involved in making that, and then I added marketing responsibility, so I became in charge of marketing and programming, and then I became president in 1996.